This is me.
This was me.
This is me.
When I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein are making a last-minute public push to convince House Republicans to vote to release all of the files related to the convicted sex offender.
I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
I suffered so much pain.
So much pain.
So much pain.
The public service announcement was created by the advocacy group World Without Exploitation and released ahead of this week's highly anticipated vote.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the dark.
People are forgetting how we got here with the Epstein files, so we're going to do a full timeline. So how did we get here? To answer that, we need to take a step backwards. It was a sunny day in 1953 when Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York. Okay. March 2005, a 14-year-old girl and her parents come to the Palm Beach police saying Epstein molested her in his mansion. Police investigate. They find 30 other underage girls. May 2006, police conclude their investigation and recommend charges. They're like, he's totally guilty. A Palm Beach grand jury indicts him on one charge, solicitation of prostitution. 2007 to 2008, Epstein's lawyers quietly negotiate a little non-prosecution agreement. With who? That's important. Remember this name, Alexander Acosta. What did the deal include? It granted Epstein federal immunity from any sex trafficking charges. It also protected any unnamed co-conspirators. Epstein agrees to plead guilty on 2 state charges instead. It's definitely worth noting here that the Office of Professional Responsibility found that Alexander Acosta used poor judgment when he decided not to notify the victims of his plans to give this deal to Epstein. June 2008, Epstein pleads guilty in Florida State Court, solicitation of prostitution and solicitation of a minor for prostitution. He's sentenced to 18 months in jail. Justice is served. You think that's a light sentence? I've got news for you. He only served 13 months. And during those 13 months, he was actually allowed out 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Work release. They also negotiated that any deputies escorting him to his office needed to dress in business attire because otherwise that would be super embarrassing for him. A sex offender. He quietly settles all these civil lawsuits with his accusers. 2011 to 2016, this was supposed to just go away for Jeffy. Luckily, it didn't. Why? Investigative journalism. Public outrage grows. January 2017, Trump is sworn in. February 2017, I told you to remember a name. Do you remember what that name was? Alexander Acosta. Trump nominates Acosta as labor secretary. He's confirmed by the Senate in April 2017. This revives interest. Why? Alex Acosta was the U.S. attorney in Florida who negotiated a non-prosecution agreement with Epstein's lawyers without telling the victims. Okay, this next part gets hot, and I'm not trying to do this for free, so I'm going to make a part 2.
Why would anyone be upset that this man bought sulfuric acid? I mean, we're talking about the king of chemicals. Doesn't everyone have this at home? At least like a human-sized drum of it. Sure, 330 gallons is a lot of sulfuric acid for one man to need. Guys, there's a ton of uses for this acid. Fertilizer, batteries, chemical refining, metal cleaning. If you miss the reason why everyone's so upset that this man had hundreds of gallons of this acid breaks stuff down so well that once you're done using it to break something down, you don't dispose of it. You just reuse the acid again. Because this acid is so strong, you will dip metal in it and it will remove all of the rust. Fucking biological disposal. Sulfuric acid breaks down things like tissue. This stuff has been being used by serial unalivers since at least the 1800s. But like this man used this acid in real life so much, he got the nickname the world's most notorious acid bath murderer. Even he didn't have 330 gallons of this stuff. And to help put this all together in a nice pretty package for anyone still not understanding the horrors of this, you will fill a tank up with this acid, use it to break things down, and then you can just continue to use that acid. But wait, they're saying things like bones and stuff like that, they would have to dispose of that. This man used an incinerator to get rid of bones. What did this guy have? He has things like trap doors built into his homes that dump directly to the ocean below his house.
What if I told you that one of the biggest scandals in modern history is still surrounded by a silence? What if I told you the conversation is not just about crimes, but about who media choose to focus on and who they don't? Today, we are talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case, not conspiracy theory, not rumors, but public reaction, media narrative, and the uncomfortable racial debate happening online right now. Guys, remember, this is Liquor Steak, and today we are going there.
If you're a little lost by all the twists and turns in the Jeffrey Epstein case, but you want to know what's going on, don't worry, I got you. So we'll start at the beginning. Jeffrey Epstein was an investment banker, and he reportedly only took clients that were worth about $1 billion or more, so he got to know some very wealthy people. He reportedly had apartments all over the world and even had a private island in the Caribbean. So then in 2005, Jeffrey Epstein is accused of paying a 14-year-old girl for a massage, and then a whole number of other girls come forward saying the same thing happened to them. In 2006, he was indicted in Palm Beach, Florida, but they also referred the case to the FBI because the allegations seemed to be so extensive. The case was handled by the U.S. District Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida under the U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, and that name should ring a bell. He actually became President Trump's labor secretary in 2017. So then in 2008, he gets a very lenient plea deal where he pleads guilty to 2 state charges. He gets 18 months in a minimum security facility. He has to register as a sex offender. He has to pay monetary damages to his victims, those that were identified. And then he gets this non-prosecution agreement where he is basically granted immunity. He and his co-conspirators, whoever they may be, granted immunity from prosecution in Florida. He was also allowed to leave for 12 hours a day to go work at a foundation that he created. Now, one of the victims sued because she wasn't told about, none of the victims apparently were told about this plea deal, and a judge ultimately agreed that those documents should be released. So then in 2009, after serving less than 13 months, Jeffrey Epstein is released, and things stay relatively quiet till about 2017. That is until Julie K. Brown, investigative reporter for the Miami Herald, files a motion to unseal court records and then publishes investigative reports the following year. So now it's 2018, the investigative reports have been published, and questions are everywhere, including of Alex Acosta, who is now the labor secretary under Donald Trump. He then later resigns in 2019 because of all the controversy. So now it's 2019, and there's a lot of public interest in Jeffrey Epstein and his potential client list and who his co-conspirators were, and he is arrested by federal agents. This time he's arrested in New York on federal sex trafficking charges. But shortly thereafter, he is found dead in his cell, and the reports were that he had unalived himself. That leads to a lot of controversy and speculation about whether it was his doing or someone else. The following year, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime friend, is also arrested. The lawsuit produces extensive records, including transcripts from victims and witnesses, Jeffrey Epstein's staff, a whole lot of people. Side note, these may be a lot of the files that people are saying release the files, because it's alleged that in this material there are names of potential buyers of his clients. Ghislaine Maxwell is ultimately convicted of sex trafficking and is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence. So now it's 2020, it's election time, and there are a whole lot of allegations about Democrats and Republicans withholding certain evidence. People like the current FBI Director Kash Patel and the Deputy Director Dan Bongino fueled a lot of this by speculating that the government was withholding critical evidence, including the names of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. So now it's 2024, Donald Trump gets reelected, and then in February of 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi is asked in an interview if it was true that the Epstein client list was going to be released, and her response was that it's sitting on her desk to be reviewed. That, of course, fuels a lot of speculation, because what do you mean they're finally going to get the client list? She then later backtracks and says that what she was talking about was investigation into flight logs and things like that. So then in 2005, the Department of Justice releases a memo saying there is no client list and that there's no credible evidence that there was any kind of a blackmail scheme. This just intensifies calls for Pam Bondi to resign. There are reports of very tense White House meetings between the FBI director, deputy FBI director, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, and the White House. Donald Trump even refers to the Epstein issue as a scam perpetuated by Democrats. Trump even refers to the Epstein issue as a scam perpetuated by Democrats. In July of 2025, the Wall Street Journal references a sexually suggestive letter with Donald Trump's name on it. Now, this has caused a lot of disagreement with the president, as about 100 Republicans in the House said they would vote with Democrats to release the Epstein files. Now, most recently, the president did come out and say that if there was a bill to release the files, he would sign it. Now, I know that's a lot of information, but at least now you're caught up.
A little girl said she felt comfortable when she thought about Jesus, so Jeffrey Epstein dressed her up as Jesus before her, the purest form of evil on.
The Epstein case shocked the world. Powerful people, wealth, political connection, and young victims whose story exposed deep corruption. But recently, online debates exploded around one of crime was there. Racial bias in how this case was discussed, where a certain victims highlighted more than others. Why? And why is race suddenly part of this conversation? Some people argue that media coverage often center of white victims more than prominently in major scandals. But others say the outrage itself is being like political debate, and this is where things get uncomfortable. Because of, when race center conversation like this, emotion rise fast, and people genuinely questioning media bias, or some using tragedy to push division. Let's be clear about this. The real issue is justice for victims, period. But in this video today, in this world, even justice become, like something that hidden. Politics, when it's involved in there, something happen. So, the conversation nobody want, to have, but why does a public outrage sometimes depend on who victims are? Why don't the story dominate headline where other fade? This is not about attacking all, unless this is not about defending any less. It is about asking myself, yourself, is it media coverage equal, or is outrage consistent, or is public attention selective? What do you think, guys? That is the uncomfortable part, but I still have another clips about that. I come back with a comment.
A huge batch of never-seen-before Epstein files were released last night, which include the likes of Michael Jackson, Chris Tucker, Bill Clinton, again, Mick Jagger, and many more. But here's the three main key takeaways. Firstly, the pictures. Bill Clinton definitely got the worst of this one, with shots of him everywhere, including looking far too comfortable in a hot tub and a swimming pool. We got not Prince Andrew lying across the laps of several redacted women, Chris Tucker, which, let's be honest, no one wanted to see him here, Michael Jackson with Bill Clinton and Diana Ross. But yet again, from the pictures, nothing groundbreaking, it's not showing anything illegal, and there are huge redactions. The second key takeaway is that this release actually failed to follow the law requiring the release of all the files. In fact, for example, every single one of the 119 grand jury testimony pages were redacted. We're talking entire pages here. However, in saying that, the Department of Justice have said that they will release more documents in the coming weeks. And the third and potentially biggest key takeaway from this is that we got confirmation last night that the FBI was warned about Epstein as far back as 1996. You see, one of the victims, Maria Farmer, submitted a complaint to law enforcement that Epstein stole pictures of her underage sisters and then sold them to potential buyers. In fact, one part of her handwritten complaint says that Epstein at one time requested, redacted name, to take pictures of young girls at swimming pools. Quote, Epstein is now threatening, redacted name, that if she tells anyone about the photos, he will burn her house down. So the FBI was tipped off about Epstein 23 years before he was finally brought to justice. And even saying justice is generous because he died before he was ever tried in court. But there is still a lot more to comb through and still to come, so we'll keep you guys updated as we know more.
Did you know that right after Jeffrey was arrested and sentenced in 2008, he won the Powerball? That's something that should be a ridiculous conspiracy theory, but it's true. Old Jeffrey was arrested in 2008 and then sentenced to 13 months in jail for some awful shit. And right after he started serving his jail sentence, he won a $30 million Powerball. Somebody's probably going to tell me I lied about that. $29.3 million Powerball. What do you think the odds of that happening are? What do you think the odds of somebody who's worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, was just arrested and sentenced to jail for 13 months for, you know what he was doing? What do you think the odds are that he won the Powerball? Hell, what do you think the odds are that somebody that's worth tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, is even playing the Powerball? Like, are we really to imagine that he went down to the local convenience store and bought a Powerball ticket? That a multi-millionaire with a fucking island and favors owed to him from just about every world leader that exists, we're supposed to believe he was playing the Powerball and he won, perfectly timed with him going to jail. Oh, and just to make it easier for you guys to look it up, it was 2008 and Zorro Trust, which he owned, claimed the ticket.
This is the disturbing true story of Jeffrey Epstein. A billionaire with powerful friends, a private island, and a criminal case that exposed one of the biggest scandals in modern day history. Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy American financier who for decades lived a life that only people could imagine. Private jets, mansions in New York, Florida, New Mexico, Paris, and a private island on the Caribbean known as Little St. James. But behind the money and the influence was something much darker. For years, Epstein was accused of sexually abusing and trafficking underage girls, some as young as 14. Victims said that they were recruited with promises of money, modeling opportunities, and tutoring, only to be exploited inside his homes. In 2008, Epstein was charged in Florida, but instead of serving serious prison time, he was given a controversial plea deal. It allowed him to serve only 13 months, mostly on work release. The deal sparked outrage with accusations that his wealth and connections were protecting him. More than a decade later, in 2019, Epstein was arrested again, but this time for federal sex trafficking charges. But Epstein never stood trial. On August 10th, 2019, he was found dead in his jail cell in New York. Authorities ruled it as a suicide, but till this day, there's a lot of controversy and rumors about what really happened. Broken cameras, guard failures, and Epstein's connections to powerful figures led to global suspicion. If you guys are interested in true crime stories, make sure to...
At the end of the day, the Epstein case exposed corruption, it exposed power, it exposed protection for the elite, but it is also exposed something else. How divided we've become when discussing the truth. So, guys, I want to ask you something. Do you think media cover or treat all victims equally? Or do you see, people focus on what happened, not focus on less? Let's have a real conversation in the comments. If you want more video like this, discussion like this, without fear, make sure you subscribe to Lika's Take. Remember that this is Lika's Take. See you in the next one. I love you guys.